As fresh warnings surface about a 24 to 48-hour window for new strikes, is Trump now boxed in by his own threats and allies, staring at a countdown to hitting Iran again? After the Baraka drone scare in the UAE and simmering drama with Saudi Arabia, is Trump being cornered into attacking Iran simply to prove he is still in control? With reports of US stockpiles and Tomahawk inventories under strain, is Trump still being pushed toward another Iran war surge within 48 hours, even as the arsenal thins out? And after failed deal-making and a tough trip to see Xi, is Trump now preparing to answer diplomatic setbacks with a massive new strike package on Iran instead? With ceasefire talks stalling yet again, the drums of war between the US and Iran are growing louder, and Trump is once more weighing whether to order fresh attacks instead of more negotiations. On May 18th, Al Jazeera reported that Washington could resume its campaign against Iran within the next 24 to 48 hours, putting a specific, alarming timeline on the table. Analyst Mohammed El-Masri said Trump is under heavy pressure from hawkish advisors, who view the current pause as a missed opportunity rather than a necessary breathing space. El-Masri argued that Trump has failed to secure the kind of capitulation from Tehran he initially expected, leaving the White House frustrated and searching for a way to reassert leverage. Reports also suggest Trump expected his talks with China's Xi Jinping to end more favorably, and that disappointment may be feeding a desire to look tough elsewhere, especially on Iran. The analyst described the Iran war as a real disaster for Trump politically, saying it has produced huge costs and limited gains while exposing US vulnerabilities and divisions. Yet, according to this assessment, Trump cannot simply declare victory and walk away, because the situation on the ground and the rhetoric he has used make a clean exit almost impossible. The latest warning lands just one day after Trump spoke with Benjamin Netanyahu on May 17th, a call explicitly focused on the Iran war and its possible next phase. Israeli media have reported that the leaders discussed renewing the war with Iran alongside Trump's China trip, suggesting they were aligning their positions across multiple fronts at once. Various reports indicate that Netanyahu and hawkish figures in Washington are urging Trump to take a harder line against Tehran, framing renewed strikes as the only way to restore deterrence. Taken together, these voices are feeding a growing perception that a second round of strikes on Iran is not just possible but near, turning the current pause into a tense countdown. The US Navy is facing a looming shortfall in Tomahawk cruise missile capacity just as planners fear a renewed large-scale war with Iran could demand heavy opening strikes. This gap arises because the Navy's Ohio-class guided missile submarines, SSGNs, are nearing retirement after more than 4 decades of service. Each Ohio-class SSGN can carry up to 154 Tomahawk cruise missiles, giving the United States a massive, covert undersea strike magazine for the opening phases of a conflict. These submarines can unleash large, precision missile salvos from underwater, hitting key enemy targets early while remaining hidden from detection. The US Navy currently operates 4 such Ohio-class guided missile submarines, which together represent a major share of America's long-range conventional firepower at sea. However, all 4 SSGNs are scheduled to retire in the coming years, mainly due to aging hulls and growing maintenance burdens that make continued operation difficult. Once removed from service, their retirement would strip 616 Tomahawk missiles from the US Undersea Strike Force on paper. Combined with the planned retirement of its Ticonderoga-class cruisers, the US Navy is on track to lose launch capacity for roughly 2,080 Tomahawk cruise missiles. This combined loss would create a pronounced drop in America's long-range, sea-based conventional missile firepower until replacements fully arrive. The Ohio-class SSGNs are widely regarded as the most powerful conventional strike submarines ever fielded, given their large missile load and flexibility. They can stay hidden underwater for long periods while delivering repeated, large-scale Tomahawk salvos against land targets. In addition to strike missions, these submarines also support covert Navy SEAL and special operations, using their size and payload to carry commandos and equipment. The submarines were originally built in the 1980s as ballistic missile boats and later converted, and they are now over 40 years old. Aging nuclear reactors and rising maintenance needs are the main drivers behind the decision to remove them from service. New Virginia-class Block V attack submarines, equipped with an added missile compartment, are expected to partially take over the SSGN's role. However, each Virginia Block V can hold only about 40 Tomahawk missiles, far fewer than a single Ohio-class SSGN. In practical terms, the Navy would need roughly 3 Virginia-class boats to match the Tomahawk load of 1 Ohio-class guided missile submarine. US officials and analysts warn this mismatch could leave a notable strike capability gap that persists well into the 2030s. To soften the transition, the Navy is considering extending the service lives of at least two of the SSGNs, USS Ohio and USS Michigan, until sufficient replacements are available. At the same time, Navy leaders have acknowledged that the costs of sustaining high-tempo operations for a prolonged Iran war would be difficult to bear under current budgets. Amid talk that fighting with Iran could resume, senior U.S. Navy leaders are now openly admitting they cannot sustain current costs without painful cuts elsewhere. The service's operations chief says the 2026 budget was written before Epic Fury was on the table, meaning this entire Iran campaign is being funded off a plan that never anticipated a major Gulf War. Admiral Daryl Caudle describes the Navy as burning bright in the Middle East, but warns that every extra patrol and strike comes at a steep operational cost that is now starting to bite. He says the fleet is rapidly depleting fuel budgets, maintenance money, stocks of smart weapons, and the finite flight hours left on jets and helicopters scheduled for overhaul. Caudle warns that without extra cash from Congress, the Navy will have to start slashing training cycles and routine operations by July, gutting readiness to keep the Iran front man. His warning comes in the wake of U.S.-Israeli operations that began on February 28th, a campaign that suddenly turned the Gulf into a 24/7 theater for carriers, destroyers, and patrol aircraft. That high-intensity phase lasted 39 days before an April 8th ceasefire understanding, but the Navy's bills, and the strain on crews and hardware, have only kept mounting since. Caudle says, and I quote, "The fiscal 2026 budget didn't bake in Operation Epic Fury. You see a large Navy force in the Middle East. So we're burning bright, but it does come at cost, and it comes at operational costs. To have the funds necessary to continue the war effort, which is quickly racking up fuel costs, operating hours, maintenance dollars, and munitions. I do fear that I'll have to start making decisions in the July time frame. My record recruiting is going to be thwarted without additional funding to PCS to those individuals from boot camp and to pay enlistment and re-enlistment bonuses."
$25 करोड़ गरीब गरीबी को परास्त करके बाहर निकले।
For the good of our nation, let's work together and let's truly make America great again.
The fastest news breaks.
Requested PM saying that look, you will have to speak to Putin and to Zelensky.
The biggest news makers.
The relationship with India is probably the most important bilateral relationship the U.S. will have for the rest of this century.
The capital delivered quite an election result today.
Expert analysis.
The million-dollar question today is how to stop this dance of death.
Ground reports.
I'm standing at the crossroad of the Kumbh Mela. Behind me are more than 100 entry ghats.
Long-form interviews.
Exclusionary politics is reflected in Manipur case as well. You don't bother because this is a small state.
Deep dive into burning issues.
It's often said DRC could be the richest country in the whole world. It's because of what sits underneath.
Why exactly did the US topple the Sheikh Hasina government?
HT videos. We don't just break news, we break it down.